Finally here, Spyro Enter the Dragonfly for the PlayStation 2. I actually grew up with this game, specifically the GameCube version, and I loved it at the time. Not so much anymore, which if you're unfamiliar with Spyro's history, you might actually be surprised seeing how much I love the first three. Well, you see, this game is made by an entirely different development team. That's right, Insomniac Games stopped making Spyro games after 3. They only made the first 3 due to a contract they had with both Sony and Universal. Now, they could have continued making Spyro, but if they did, they would continue seeing little profit because most of the money went towards Sony and Universal. That, and they kind of ran out of ideas for the series, which you can tell by Spyro 3 having all those extra gameplay styles. So, they went on to doing their own thing, which at first was Girl with the Stick. That didn't go anywhere, so they moved on to Ratchet and Clank. But of course, Universal isn't going to let this moneymaker of a franchise go, so they got new developers. Those new developers being Equinox and Check 6. This is their very first game and very last. That's not a red flag. So this isn't actually the first non-Insomniac Spyro game. That would be Spyro Season of Ice in the Game Boy Advance. I don't know if you can see it on that screen. Trust me, this is it. But it is the first console game, and spoiler alert, not a good start. You see, this is often referred to as the Sonic 06 of the Spyro franchise. And if you know anything about that game, you know that's not a particularly good statement. But yeah, but anyway, what makes it so bad? Well, obviously that's what this video is about, so here we go. Spyro 4's story is simple. Spyro, Hunter, Bianca, and the Sparks are all celebrating the day when baby dragons get their dragonflies, when suddenly, Ripto. After some staring at Ripto's flaccid horn, he steals all the baby dragonflies. Well, more accurately intended to steal them for their power, but his type just screwed up or something and scattered them instead. So of course, it's up to Spyro to save the baby dragonflies and defeat Ripto. This story isn't the best. Why are dragonflies so important all of a sudden? Aside from Spyro, there hasn't been a single dragon throughout the entire series that needed a dragonfly. The fact that dragonflies are suddenly so important kinda devalues Spyro and Sparks' friendship. Why do Crush and Gulp talk? The fact that they were silent in Spyro 2 made them feel like mindless beasts. Giving them a voice ruins that. Why and how is Ripto still alive? Is lava harmless to dinosaurs? Why does the camera zoom in on Sparks while he's talking? He speaks in buzzes. Put some subtitles there. Why is there only 2 cutscenes throughout the whole game aside from the 100% ending? Why does Ripto randomly kill Crush and Gulp? Does he want to lose? Why is Ripto's horn made out of jello? You know what? Whatever. It's the story. It's not important. It's all about the gameplay. And unfortunately, that's not great either. It's pretty similar to 2 and 3's gameplay, but you collect dragonflies now. And this game is thankfully missing the extra gameplay styles. That happy omission hardly matters and the overall controls kinda suck. It's always hard to explain bad controls, but I'll try to do my best. I guess the best way of putting it is it feels like you're constantly moving through syrup, except without the speed decrease. Whenever you move, jump, and even charge, it feels like the game is fighting you. It doesn't want you to do these things, making platforming way harder than it should be. It doesn't end there. There's this really annoying issue where if you bump into a wall while gliding, you fall, causing for some really dumb deaths. After marathoning the original trilogy, then moving on to this game, it was jarring. I remember feeling this absolutely disgusted expression on my face throughout the first half of my first session. I really forgot how poorly this game controlled. Oddly enough, I can't say the same for the ice controls. Those are genuinely great. It's not particularly hard to control Spyro on ice. Turning is good and turning on the dime is actually kind of fun to mess with. Why is this the game the ice controls they got right? This game's performance is another major issue. You probably noticed it by now, but the frame rate is beyond crap. I'm not the type of person that particularly cares about frame rates in games. Give me 30 FPS and I'm normally content. But this? Wow. I promise you, this is not my capture card. This is how the game runs, at least on the PS2. It even went to 0 FPS here. It's so bad and inconsistent, it gave a kid a seizure in 2007. I'm not making that up. Here's an article, and I'll also put that in the description. To add to that, The load times. They're the worst I've ever seen. They can seriously take up to a minute, which makes accidental level visits much more annoying. This is a platformer. There's absolutely no reason why it should take this long. The technical issues don't end there. This is a glitchy game. A very glitchy game. Within the first 3 minutes of recording, I loaded up my old 100% save file. Yes, I've done it before, don't judge. So I can show the intro cutscene in widescreen because you can't do that in the main menu for some reason. I mean, I like the option, but why? Anyway, when I paused the game, I was still moving around. How? Again, within the first 3 minutes. 2 of those 3 minutes were loading screens. It does not end there. You can climb on walls you're clearly not supposed to climb on, ignore the laws of physics and fly while facing down, charge without an animation, walking on air. I was able to escape this game's boundary by doing this. Yellow gems sometimes being worth 25 and other times being worth the normal 10. These gems are apparently worth nothing. Bass sound effects playing way after they're broken. And so much more. I think now is a good time to point out that this game was rushed hard. This game was originally going to have 25 levels, 120 dragonflies, and it was going to run in 60 frames per second. The final game has 8 levels plus 1 hub world, 90 dragonflies, and runs at this. Putting aside the technical aspect, there's the levels, and I actually kinda like them. Well, the theming at least. Crab Circle Country is pretty cool. It plays on the idea of farms being a hotspot for aliens. Dragonfly Dojo may not be the most creative thing out there, but I'm a sucker for the ancient Japanese look. Thieves' End is genuinely one of the coolest ideas for a Spyro stage in this series. Have you ever wondered where the thieves stash their loot? Well, that's this level. So, are they okay with me stealing their gems? There's even a level based on Jurassic Park called Jurassic Jungle. That's actually kinda awesome. Unfortunately, this game has a strong lack of stages. Those 4 stages I mentioned is only half the game. Yeah, the only stages I neglected to mention was Luau Island, Cloud 9, Honey Marsh, and Monkey Ministry. There's obviously the hub world, but there's only one. I alluded to the fact that I enjoy the stage themes, but not the stages themselves. Do you know why? Look at this. Look at the empty space. This area is only populated by gems and enemies. Once those are gone, nothing. This makes traversing the level and collecting the gems so much more tedious. If this is the original trilogy's level design, small and compact, but with plenty of things to do, this is Spyro 4's level design, large and empty, with nothing to do. I think this is obvious why this is the case. They wanted to avoid making a game shorter than Spyro 1, but they didn't have enough development time to make enough levels. So what they did is they took what they already had and stretched it out like a hairband. So, not really making it bigger, but instead artificially inflating it, or again, stretching to make it appear bigger. This isn't the only problem with the level design. This game really loves hallways. They're everywhere. When you're in these, there's nothing going on. All you do is charge forward. That's it. I know why they're here. They're here to mask load times. Though they don't even do that sometimes. Even if they did do that consistently, is it really necessary to have so many of them? The original games didn't have these. They were much more subtle with loading the level. They use a thing called culling. Basically, if it isn't on screen, it doesn't exist. This is why forcing widescreen is a really bad idea with the original games. Enter the Dragonfly is nowhere near as efficient with its resources, so we had to settle with these really long, drawn-out hallways. To make it even more tedious, they like to scatter gems on either side, forcing you to zigzag to collect them. Not that gems really matter. In the previous Spyro games, specifically Spyro 2 and 3, moneybags was used to give gems a purpose. You would pay them whenever you need to unlock a new pathway or a new ability or whatever. And that's still kind of the case for Spyro 4, but there's one massive issue. He appears once throughout the entire game. Yeah, one time. Yeah, once in Dragonfly Dojo, moneybags ask for 200 gems to create some platforms. After the initial 200 gems, every gem you collect is a complete waste of time. Unless you go for 100% like me. Okay, well, that too is also a waste of time, but you know what I mean. I don't get this. They could have easily just locked the gates with gem tolls. instead of the breath abilities you unlock in this game, which I'll talk about later. And I know that'd be lazy, but it'd be something. It'd be better than making gems just completely pointless.
You know what? Most Spyro characters barely appear in this game, if at all. Hunter appears for a handful of minigames and the obligatory gliding tutorial. Bianca's in the opening cutscene and maybe 1 or 2 times after that. The professor doesn't appear at all unless you count his voice clips from those pigs. Why? I haven't talked about the breath abilities yet, have I? Throughout the game you'll find these runes, these crystal things, not so hidden in a handful of levels. After you take it to the Crystal Dragon statue, a nice throwback to Spyro 1, you get a new ability, typically a breath. The first one is Bubble Breath. It's used exclusively to catch dragonflies and break these tikis somehow. And I don't like it. It can be pretty annoying to catch these guys.
He'll be able to combine dragon magic with my magic and grant you bubble breath to catch dragonflies. They're shy and will probably run away from you anytime you come near them.
Oh, they're shy? Is that why they fly around mocking you by going...
Anyway, I don't like it because it makes a ton of these guys feel like egg thieves, and I don't mind catching those guys, but this much? It doesn't help that they have questionable hitboxes, even the stationary ones. Like the dragons from Spyro 1 and 3, each one of them have a name. It's a nice touch, but I think they are running out of names at this point. Toons, Cinder, Tashi Station, Scuttlebutt. Also, am I the only one that thinks they sound like Goofy's iconic scream?
Hey, it's Grace!
The second breath is Electric Breath. It's used pretty much only to zap these poles for a minigame or a progression. Not very interesting. The last unlockable breath is the Ice Breath. It's used to burn out fires and, I love the idea of multiple breath abilities. It may not be entirely original. Spyro 2 and 3 mess with the idea of Ice Breath once or twice, but I like the idea of expanding on it. My issue is they're incredibly situational. Aside from the very occasional gate challenge, they're not really used at all. Okay, Dragonfly Dojo uses the Ice Breath for the baby dragons, but that's once. And why can't I jump off this dragon? You also need the Ice Breath to kill the robot dinosaurs in Jurassic Jungle, but that's it. I wasn't lying about the Electric Breath either. That's really only used for metal poles.
All I'm saying is I wish the breath abilities were used a little more. Maybe to solve puzzles, or certain enemies can only be killed using a certain breath ability, like fire, ice, electricity, or bubbles.
My last complaint is more minor, but I'm bringing it up anyway. There's exactly 4 breath abilities, but to change breath abilities, you cycle through with L1. Why? Wouldn't it make more sense if each breath ability was assigned to a direction on the D-pad? That way you wouldn't have to cycle through them until you have the right one, even occasionally missing it. It's not like anyone uses the D-pad for movement in 3D games on the PS2. Besides, this game only partially supports D-pad movement. You can walk just fine, but for some reason you can barely move while charging. Why is this an issue? The last ability you unlock is the Wing Shield. It sucks. It's used exclusively for these wizard Riptocs in one level, and it just doesn't work. It always seems to go every direction besides the direction you want. If there's a science to it, I don't know, I just never can hit this right. The minigames and missions range from okay to really bad. My first issue is that they're all in these portals that take you to separate areas. I didn't mind that in Spyro 3 because it was really clear which portals take you to the hub worlds and which ones take you to the minigames. Look at these 2 portals. Again, one takes you to the hub world and the other takes you to a mission, but they both look the same. As a side note, I just wanted to mention how much lamer the portals are in this game. The old ones use a leveled skybox to signify where the portals go. It looked kind of awesome. This game has generic magical portal effects, and Spyro sometimes flies into a wall. As for the actual missions, and not the thing that takes you to that mission, you have Protecting Puffy Palace, where you fly in circles and shoot a bunch, slowly going forward as you move this clunky tank. These awful floating platform stages where you have to zap all the poles to get to the top. I really hate both of these stages, especially the last one. They do a fantastic job highlighting this game's awful controls. Another mission with similar problems is a tower in Jurassic Jungle. This one sucks. You have to climb up to the top while avoiding things, but I swear, a good chunk of these obstacles are flat out impossible to avoid. There's at least multiple pathways that vary in difficulty, but it's not always easy to tell which one has impossible obstacles and which ones don't. Impossible obstacles shouldn't be a thing in the first place. Speedways also make a comeback, and they're actually not too bad. This time around, they're in the main levels instead of being in the hub world. The frame rate is still absolute crap and the controls are a bit too loose for my taste. I'm not a fan how they have the same theming as the stage they're in. It makes them feel a whole lot less unique. There's only 3 of them in a whole game, so they definitely have a lot less focus compared to the original trilogy. But you know what? They work. There's nothing unfair or broken about them, aside from this. They're just not as fun as 1, 2, and 3. Functionally, they're about the same as Spyro 3's. You still have the normal destroy everything in a certain amount of time, but you also have the races, which are still pretty easy. Just like Spyro 3's, I did them all in one try. There's only 3 races in this game, so maybe that's not saying much. They don't give gems at all, which I guess that pill would be a lot harder to swallow if gems weren't useless. This does make them a whole lot less worthwhile. Speedways take a lot longer compared to most Dragonflies, so despite them being some of the better parts of the game, I'd say the lack of any extra reward make me want to say skip these if for some reason you decide to play this game. One of the mission types I neglected to mention were the slides. I like the idea, but the controls aren't the greatest, and some of them have some pretty flat level design. I did actually enjoy the last one quite a bit. The level design isn't offensive, and the music is actually pretty rockin'. The music as a whole is actually pretty good, which shouldn't come to as a shocker once you learn Stuart Copeland is once again the composer. I don't think it's as good as his previous work, but it's still pretty good. My one issue is he added a lot of chanting to some of the music, and I don't really like that for the most part.
Spyro, Hunter, don't worry. I think I know where to start. Follow me.
There's still a few tracks I like, my favorite being the Dragon Realms, the hub world theme. It's peaceful while actually being a song, unlike Spyro 2's hub worlds.
Yes! I did just say something in Spyro Enter the Dragonfly is better than Spyro 2.
I just really like the melody. In fact, I might say this is my favorite Spyro song that isn't from Spyro 2. Another song I really like is Little Wild Island's theme. It has the chanting I mentioned earlier, but I think it works here. It's a tropical beach setting with tribes. Chanting makes sense here. There's also this.
Again?
Before I forget, I had this really weird music glitch happen to me. When I 100%ed Honey Marsh, I paused the game and a song started playing. I've never heard this song before. I don't think it can be heard anywhere else in the game, and I'm very curious what it could be. If you want to see the full clip, I'll put a link in the description to an unlisted video. Moving past that odd glitch, the voice acting is also pretty solid. Most voice actors reprise their roles. Tom Kenny is still Spyro along with a crap ton of NPCs. Greg Berger is still Hunter and Ripto, etc. Some of the voices do sound a bit off. I swear Spyro's voice is a bit more high-pitched. Greg Berger's Ripto sounds a lot more flamboyant, which takes away from his perpetual angriness I love so much in Spyro 2, and Bianca sounds off.
Drat, that didn't exactly work right. You're in a cage, you furry numbskull. How can I trap you by letting you out?
All of these characters had the same voice actors and actresses, so different voice direction I guess. One character you're going to hear a lot more is Sparks. He's the tutorial character, pretty much replacing Zoe. Even though Zoe is in this game, whatever. If you thought Zoe was annoying, she is, but Sparks is so much worse. He tells you the most obvious things, like how you should collect gems.
When I first played Spyro when I was only 3 years old, even I was able to come to the conclusion that shiny is good, collect good.
However, you can turn tutorials off. Why is this the game that implements such a basic feature? Don't get too excited, Sparks will still tell you about some things, he just leaves out the super obvious stuff. Baby steps. Also, one part in the game, Sparks has the voice of an NPC.
Hi!
Yeah, I don't know how that happened. The graphics are another thing I can appreciate to an extent. Well, aside from the frame rate, it's not amazing or anything, but it looks okay. Some of the stages I think look pretty nice, but some of the texture work is kinda flat. The only part that stuck out as really bad was the ripple effect on Luau Island's loading screen. What is this? It's literally a flat white texture. One thing I really appreciate about this game is it has a widescreen mode. Not too many games from this era had that. It wasn't implemented the best though. The HUD doesn't adjust for the change until you load a new area. Some graphics are screwed up, like Sparks' bubble and the moon in the background are ovals. And they clearly forgot about the title screen when they added this feature, because the skybox ends before the screen does. Okay, I lied earlier about the one thing that looked bad to me. The character models also kinda suck. Spyro's character model is the exception. It's his PS1 design brought into the then modern era, and I think they did a pretty nice job. My only complaint is for some reason the lines on his horns are purple, and it looks really weird. You really don't notice this in standard definition the way the game was meant to be played, but if you play this game on an emulator in HD, it looks off. Like I said, good model for the most part, but Spyro's the exception. Everyone else looks like they're made out of Play-Doh. Hunter, Bianca, and Ripto. I already mentioned Ripto's flaccid horn, but I really can't get over all of his other animations. Why is everything so exaggerated? What's up with his jaw? Can you unhook it like a snake? This looks way too goofy. I can appreciate a goofy villain, but I don't think Ripto was meant to be like that. At least his dialogue doesn't reflect that. The writing as a whole is also lacking a lot of charm. There wasn't a single part that made me laugh unironically. Some of it is just confusing.
Remember, Spyro, the way of the dragon is to be a dragon.
What?
The fact that none of these dragons say thank you for releasing me is the biggest disappointment in this game. The few times they attempt humor just isn't funny.
No problem. I'll keep a nose out for your friends. I think I can smell them roasting off in the distance. Just kidding.
That's a little screwed up, Spyro.
It could be your density. I mean, your destiny. Now, I will open that gate. That, it appears, is my density. I mean, destiny, Spyro.
These dragons are a goldmine of bad writing. This text doesn't even match what he's saying.
Whoa, what happened? I feel like an iced lolly. Did those rip-talks put me on ice? Egads! Thank you, Spyro!
I briefly mentioned earlier that Ripto kills Crush and Gulp, but I can't leave it at that. Why does he do that? Why are they even in this game to begin with? You never fight them, and they both get exactly one sentence of dialogue. There's only one fight and it's Ripto. This is where I normally have a spoiler alert, but does anyone care? This fight is absolutely awful. It has two phases, well, technically three, but the first two phases are pretty much the same. The first one's not too bad, it's not a good fight, but it's at least not unfair. This is a one time where all your breath abilities are useful, except Bubble Breath. Ripto barricades himself with ice and then fire. Whatever it is, you'll have to use the opposite breath ability to weaken the barrier. This phase is pretty easy, but if you take too long, he'll start throwing projectiles at you. I'm not sure how you reliably avoid this attack, but it didn't happen to me all that much, so whatever. The final phase is dumb. He grows into a giant beast.
Well, that came out of nowhere.
He'll occasionally bash the ground, and sometimes his scepter will get stuck, prompting you to zap it with Spyro's electric breath. I don't know if I don't understand this fight, but it seems random whether or not his scepter will get stuck. You also have to dodge his attacks, which sounds easy, but the camera doesn't focus on Ripto, so you have moments like this. Believe it or not, avoiding attacks is pretty hard when I'm constantly adjusting the camera. I didn't mention this before, but you only unlock the final phase if you get 100%. You only get the first two phases if you have 89 or less dragonflies. You even only get the first phase if you have the flame breath, and yes, it is possible to get to the final boss with only the flame breath. It's interesting that that's the case because the only way to do this is with glitches, by swimming in the air. It's possible to beat this game within 5 minutes. I actually did do this just so I could beat the game early and get the gem finder. Yeah, you have to unlock it that way, which is dumb. Call me a cheater, I just want to play as little of this game as possible. If you beat the game without Ripto's final form, you don't even get an ending, it just fades to the credits. That's a little abrupt. The ending you do get for 100% is just Ripto whining and Spyro winking at the screen. Besides the Ripto Pinata, which is actually a pretty nice touch, there really isn't anything else. The final kicker is this. At the very end of the credits, you get this quote. Your work is you. Don't let you down.
That's a nice quote, but come on, no way they didn't see the irony. You don't release a game this buggy and put a quote like that at the end of the credits.
Also, Sparks consumes my nightmares. Still better than the PS2 save icon.
So that was Spyro Enter the Dragonfly for the PlayStation 2, also released for the Nintendo GameCube. Which, I guess it's worth noting that that version runs a bit better. Like, the load times are quicker and the frame rate isn't as crap. It's still not good, but, you know, it's better. I really wouldn't recommend this game to anyone. Unless you're a massive Spyro fan and just have to own every game in a collection like me. But if that is the case, then you probably already own this game. Otherwise, stay away. I don't care if the GameCube is the only console you have and you want to get into Spyro. This is not how you do it. Please.
This sucks, and it doesn't just suck because I don't like seeing a series of love go so low. It sucks because this game had potential. If it was finished, the game would have looked and ran way better. It would have had better level design, it would have played better, and Nasty Nork would have been working alongside Ripto, which would have been an awesome callback to Spyro 3's epilogue, and also some pretty good fan service. And it really sucks because Check 6 and Equinox never got a chance to prove themselves because of a greedy publisher. I think most people are in agreement that after Spyro Reignited Trilogy, we will finally see another classic style game. And let's just hope Activision doesn't do the same thing Universal did with this game. I don't want to see another Enter the Dragonfly, or a game even close to this level.
Well, this isn't the last console classic Spyro game. That would be Spyro A Hero's Tale, and I think that'll be my next video. I'm taking a while for each one of these videos, so it's hard to say, because I'm definitely going to drop everything to do a Reignited Trilogy when that comes out, because that's only, at the time of filming this, about a little under 3 months away, so, not 2 months away, sorry. That's how you know these parts aren't scripted. But yeah, I hope I can get that video done in time. We'll see. Anyway, see you guys next time whenever I review Spyro A Hero's Tale or a Reignited Trilogy if I'm lazy enough. So, bye.